Welcome again to THPT's YouTube channel. My name is David McKee and I'm really excited today because we're starting a new series and I'm joined by Liz. And the series is going to be looking at just topics and we're going to discuss them in an unscripted way. And as you can see, today's topic is all about technology. So Liz, thanks for joining. We are psychologists and we are parents. So let me start with you first. Just tell us a bit about your family and the age of your children, but just talk to me about how and where you've embraced technology within your home.
Sure, yeah. So my kids are still at primary, I've got a boy in year 6 and a little girl who is 8 and in year 3.
Yeah.
And how we've embraced it, I think technology has been in their lives as long as they can remember, you know.
Yeah.
They see parents swiping on a phone or an iPad and it's terrifying how quickly they pick up those gestures better than you, know about settings on your devices better than you.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, barring taking a really radical step of completely banning it from the home, which is difficult as adults when we need some of those devices for our work, you know, it's in the home. And I think it's fair to say that every parent then has to have that sort of debate and thought about, well, how are we going to do this so that it's a positive thing rather than something that's become a problem in the home.
And I guess that's the tension really, because it's a little bit Marmite.
Yeah.
So talk to me about the upsides as a family, embracing the positive side of technology. We will obviously flip that in a second, but let's just talk about what's good about technology in a family.
Yeah, so I think it's fair to say that kids with technology gets quite a bad press.
Yeah.
And what you don't always see in the press is that other side of the story.
Yeah.
So children will need to use technology in their professional lives to a very likely degree.
Absolutely.
They are learning about it at school. They are being trained to be digital citizens.
Yeah.
And it will be a crucial part of their lives as they grow up and as they embrace, you know, education and then career opportunities. It's an opportunity for kids to be creative, to have fun, to connect with other kids.
Yeah.
It's got lots and lots of positives, and there are lots of educational apps out there, so they can really learn through using technology, and it's a real opportunity as well to come together as a family and have some fun using technology. So there are lots of games that you can get where you can kind of compete together as a family and have a real laugh doing that. It's brilliant for a rainy day.
Right. So there's a kind of social element, you've said, learning, but then you've made some decisions though about how you use it.
Yeah.
I guess, and maybe that's to prevent some of the downsides or possible downsides. So what decisions have you made and stood by that to make sure the pendulum doesn't swing the other way?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I can remember when my son was in year 2, so he'd have been about 7, and other kids were talking about Minecraft. Now my boy is not particularly adept with a football.
Okay.
And really the 2 items of currency on the playground were chat about Minecraft and kicking a football around. And so he asked...
And Minecraft?
Oh, okay, so Minecraft is like, it's digital Lego really. So it's your whole world is made out of blocks and you can build homes and run a farm. Everything is very blocky. So you've got pigs that are like a bit cubier looking.
Right. So quite creative.
It's extremely creative. You know, all the lovely things about Lego, but probably a bit more so because you can run electricity and create devices and create trapdoors and and you have to keep on top of feeding your livestock but not letting your livestock get overrun with, you know, too many piglets or whatever. It's a marvellous thing. I mean, I haven't got into it as in playing it, but I hear the kids chat about it and I can absolutely see the pluses of it. You know, that it really is quite a lovely game. But when he asked about it, I didn't know what it was entirely.
Okay.
And I suppose a bit of a red flag went up for me of, you know, 7-year-old boy asking to get into gaming already. So I did a bit of research, and I'm not a huge Mumsnet person, but every now and then it's quite handy just to see what other parents are saying about these dilemmas. And the main tips that I picked up were, number 1, it's really not a harmful game. It's actually a lovely game.
Sounds great.
But number two, it can get really addictive. You know, if you're having fun making this incredible world and then your parents say, right, you need to turn that off now.
Right.
Kids can really kick off at that. It's like taking away something incredibly rewarding and enjoyable. And understandably, they don't like that. They want to carry on playing. So we set some ground rules that basically said you can have an hour and a half total, and that will be split as you want over Friday, Saturday, Sunday. But we prefer to see it's 30 minutes on each of those 3 nights, or Friday night and then sometime over the weekend. And if you make a big fuss when your half an hour is up, you won't get it the next day.
Got you. Wow.
Because we knew that it does lend itself to that. It's an incredibly, I'm afraid, addictive game.
Okay, and then just so I'm clear then, you're doing that to prevent the addiction. That's why you're doing it.
Yeah, to set the boundaries and make them sort of sharing the responsibility for, now it's, you know, with Minecraft, it's save and quit. That's the expression in their house, time to save and quit. They know that they can save their world. They can pick it up the next time that they've got some access to Minecraft. And everybody knows where they stand with it.
Right.
And actually, when occasionally, rarely, but occasionally when I've had to impose you know, there's been an enormous fuss about saving and quitting, that tends to come from the little one less than the older one. Then actually she doesn't make a fuss when she knows, you haven't got any Minecraft time tomorrow. In fact, sometimes she reminds us. Because she knows that's the rule of engagement. And kids actually, surprisingly, they do like to know where they stand. They like to know what the rules of engagement are. They will hold you to account as well. Sometimes I hear on a Saturday, I didn't have my Minecraft time yesterday. And I'll say, that's fine, so you can have 45 today and 45 tomorrow. And then you've got your hour and a half again.
And if you rewound back, would you do the same again?
100%.
Okay, good.
Yeah, it's been really helpful. It's not my own invention. I found it on the internet, but it's really helped everyone to know where they stand with it. And it's actually really rare that we have to then take that away as a natural consequence of not behaving appropriately around technology. But you know, we do it, and when we have to do it, we have to see that through.
Right. But I'm hearing from you though that by thinking it through and managing it, I'm sensing that technology then is not a big issue. Am I hearing that or not in your home?
I think that's fair to say, but
they're young. They've still got a few more teenage years where they're potentially going to get stroppy with you, and might want to. That 30 minutes might want to come more. Or
well, I think you have to hold all of this stuff flexibly because times move on. My son gave up Minecraft for Lent last year, and now he's not particularly bothered about Minecraft. His interests have moved on to other things, and that's absolutely fine. And what I've said to him is we'll have similar rules to the ones we had with Minecraft, and he knows where he stands with that then. So I definitely think you have to hold things a little bit flexibly because, you know, a 15-year-old isn't going to be so into Minecraft, I assume, as a 7 or 8-year-old.
But I like that phrase though. So you're saying that as children are growing up, those parameters are then being flexed and changed.
And you'll talk to them about why that is. You may even have to have conversations with the little one that says, well, yes, but that's because he's that bit older now, and when you get to year 4, you will have those same privileges. And the little one won't like hearing that, but they've heard it before, and they will have to learn to live with that because, you know, kids grow up, they develop, their needs change, and you have to roll with that. And then, of course, there's never been a greater time for rolling with the times than this last year. Technology became a hugely bigger part of the diet, didn't it?
It did, and for legitimate reasons.
Parents had to get some work done at times, so then it was handy as a something they could do. Schools were telling kids, go and look at these YouTube videos as part of their homeschooling. So, my goodness, our children don't need any encouragement to go and look at some YouTube videos. Whether they're the ones that the school have asked for is another matter.
Yeah, exactly.
And then, of course, to connect with their friends, they wanted to FaceTime or WhatsApp. They wanted to do some video conferencing effectively with their mates. And it was hard to say no to that because we know that children need their friendships and they need their peer interaction as well. So when I say hold it flexibly, there's never been a year like we've just had for that. I think you absolutely have to have your rules of engagement, but also have some common sense added to them. So those have been our experiences bringing up our littler children at this time. But I'm really aware that there's a whole world that's going to come at me when our kids start hitting the teen years. You've alluded to it. So I'm really interested what you've noticed as a parent bringing up teenagers with technology around.
Yeah, so obviously as a 1921, when there were single digits, we actually decided not to go down the road of things like PlayStations and Xboxes. We had that conversation with them, and when they were 9 and 7 or 9 and 6 or whatever they were at the time, even then that conversation didn't go down well. But then I think we're the parents, they're the children.
Yeah.
We did buy a Wii, so that the point you raised earlier about having family fun, absolutely, I endorse that, and it's great. And especially when you get beaten by your kids, they love it when they're better than mum and dad.
When they were that little, when they were sort of 7 and 9 or whatever, presumably though, at that time, things weren't like they are now, because things have moved so quickly, haven't they? So I don't know about you, but I use my smartphone a great deal just to have a quick scan through emails, but presumably that wasn't the thing they were seeing as much.
Well, you're right in that sense. So smartphones, absolutely, but within the school system, so at the time our 9, 10-year-old, there would have been PlayStations and Xboxes coming into the home, maybe not for their peers, but siblings of their peers. And of course, so that was in their language. So if they went to play at one of their friends, then there's this thing called an Xbox or PlayStation or whatever. And of course, what did they want for Christmas? And but then I guess for us, the question wasn't so much about technology. It's, well, really, what is our role in terms of parenting our children? Because I believe absolutely when they're growing up, they have to learn to become more independent, independent play, independent learners. Now, obviously not when they're 6, but when they're 12, 13, that needs to swing. I think there's nothing wrong with kids getting bored, because then they can be a bit creative and go out and do things. But also, as parents, what is our job to then do things with them that they enjoy? And so I remember we didn't go down that route. We've got some countryside outside, not far from our house, where we can go walking. And so when there's a limited amount of funds to spend on pleasures and things like that, well, where did we want to invest the money? So they both had bicycles that would go up hills and down hills and through mud and things. So there was a lot more outdoor activity. But I remember even in the winter, one of them being obsessed because we had this old video recorder, and I promised that in the winter we'd spend the day taking it apart and having a look at it and trying to see how it works. And so there's so many things, and it doesn't have to involve lots of money. Because my fear, and I guess in the back of my mind, there was that concern. I'm a psychologist, and I see, and you use the word addiction, it's a strong word. And I guess for most people, you don't wake up one day and suddenly you're addicted. It's a gradual process. And I guess I just didn't want to go down that road where we're bumping into, in essence, issues of heading into an addiction. And by not having it, that was never going to happen. But it puts a huge amount of responsibility on us we need to then do things with our kids to entertain them. And
I think you're right, and I think it's really important as an adult that you make some decisions around. It's okay, perhaps, to have some technology in the home.
Absolutely.
But do our kids know how to go outside and find some outdoor materials and make up a game or make up a world in the way that they might make a Minecraft world? Can they make a world in the woods? Is there a story to that? Do they still have that ability to know what to do with themselves? And actually, kids, the world over, in the third world, kids will pick up a stick and create a toy out of it.
That's it.
And that, we don't want to take that away from our kids. We don't want them to get to a point where they don't know how to calm down if it's not in front of a screen. They don't know how to manage their emotions, so they just avoid them by being on technology. They don't know how to entertain themselves, and they're, Mum, I'm bored. And then we feel, well, we've got to do something for them. Yes, parents do some of that, but some of it we do need to expect our kids to have a look and see what they've got that isn't technology, that they could get out, pull out a jigsaw, get out the colouring book, pull out the Lego. Most kids have access to some things, and kids can be incredibly creative if they don't.
But I feel though that, and I feel in many ways, compared to other parents, I feel we had an easier ride for the simple reason that when you say managing emotions, you and I know there are conditions that children have, like autism or ADHD, where that's much, much harder.
Definitely.
And I don't want, what I'm saying, I don't want to seem glib or brushing over that it can be extremely difficult for parents and children that have some of those difficulties, where if socially you're finding it hard, then there is that risk that you're going to embrace technology much easier and almost find your friend in the technology. And I guess for those parents, maybe having those conversations earlier become even more important. How do we help develop our children in that balanced way, rather than finding something that they feel comfortable with, and then suddenly that becomes all encompassing.
I think you're right, and I think perhaps it does link back to that thing I said before about, you know, being flexible and moving with your particular situation. We had to do that for the pandemic. We may, as parents, also have to do that because of the specifics of the kids that we've got.
Sure.
And I think that's absolutely fully appropriate. This is not something that I've done, but I've pasted it into the links that go with this YouTube video. There are charities like the NSPCC and some of the other online safety charities. They actually suggest a family internet agreement, which is actually a physical contract.
We never did that.
Yeah, no, we didn't either. That's maybe we will in the future.
Right.
Who knows what conversations are going to hit us at secondary? But it's really interesting. You can have a little Google, or we'll put some links on the YouTube website. That families have found it helpful to have some really clear scoping of what's in and what's out around technology.
Okay, and that's so the whole family.
Yes.
Are in part of this agreement, not just
this
is agreement for children, right?
I mean, kids are pretty smart, aren't they, generally? If Dad's sitting there swiping through his emails at the breakfast table, but they're not allowed devices until X time, that's not going to seem fair or right.
I agree.
I think, you know, it depends on the family, but if meal times, for example, are sacred and a bit of family time, you have a conversation about what do we do about devices during those times, when are devices switched off, when is bedtime, and how many hours before bedtime is the device going to be switched off? Because we do know that the blue light from screens is very stimulating for kids' brain, for all of our brains, and actually it can be much harder for a child to get to sleep when they've had the screen time just immediately before supposedly falling asleep. So we always advocate that one, I think, as psychologists, don't we? That there's a gap, there's a wind down time from the screen, rather than fiddling with the phone till 11 and then being completely surprised they can't fall asleep. And, you know, you've mentioned children that have a diagnosis of ADHD in young people. We know that sometimes sleep can be an extra issue on top. So parents are really doing themselves a favour if they take the advice around screen time and managing, you know, when is switch off time.
And 2 or 3 hours before bedtime.
Yeah, I've heard of parents, you know, that the phones get handed in at 9. Kids perhaps go to sleep at 10:30 because they're older kids. But they hand the phone in, there's no fiddling with it through the night, checking in, doing social media till goodness knows 1 in the morning, and then waking up utterly shattered and unable to manage school. It's a huge temptation for teens. I get the temptation, but again, if that's a part of whenever it is, year 7, that they get handed their phone, and those are the rules of engagement, you're setting yourself up for a greater chance of there being less conflict down the line.
So let's wrap up. I'm gonna ask you to just share a couple of summary points, but I was asked one question about technology in terms of what's the one. This is in a parent session. One piece of advice it was, and the one piece of advice I gave was around the certificate of games, and sorry if this gets animated or I get excited, but it does drive me nuts. It really upsets me when I hear of, let's say, a 15-year-old playing an 18-year-old game and there's a 10-year-old in the background.
Those 18 games are really tricky, aren't they? Because there's sexual content, there's violence. I mean, I was shown a game as part of an online safety course that I did. I had no idea.
Right.
You know, it's a Microsoft game, but that game's been developed for adults.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, for me, it's simple. It's no.
It's a no.
It's that children, and really, if I'm honest, a 15-year-old, I don't think should be playing
Not
an 18.
particularly, no.
But that was the one bit I gave. So as we wrap up, what advice would you give?
It's really hard, I think, to give just one piece of advice. We've talked a lot, I think, today about clear boundaries, and but boundaries that you hold flexibly as the child develops and as new situations come up, but always with that big injection of sort of common sense and and with the good of the child held, you know, as absolute centre. I think the other thing we've touched on it briefly is balance. I always talk to parents about a mixed diet. So you don't want them. Yeah, I think it's really helpful, because we know that we wouldn't deprive children entirely of fat in their diet, because fat has its function in the body. But equally, we wouldn't just force feed them lard non-stop. So I just think it's really helpful to give parents a picture of how we make sure that they're outdoors playing, they're playing imaginatively, they're getting exercise, they're getting face-to-face social contact when times are normal. And I think that's really crucial. And if you hold that concept of the mixed diet in mind with technology, where technology isn't the only solution to every problem that might come up, then you're probably on a really good track.
Okay. Well, Liz, thanks for joining us. This is our first on Psychologists Unscripted. Hopefully you enjoyed that. There's more in the links below, and then look out for more content where I talk to other psychologists. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.